This will be a slightly unusual video for this channel in that I am looking at overdrive pedals. The majority of my work, I'm only concerned with amp and amp overdrive, but I have become recently aware that it would be very good for me to demonstrate how various amps take common pedals. I've got a lot of good time-based effects that I rarely use, other than when I need to show that an amp clips or whatever, if the effects loop is too hot. But it can be very important to show how amps do with an overdrive pedal. So, some amps get fizzy because they're so bright, etc., etc., or you get an exaggerated noise floor because of weird circuits at the input of some amps. Think Mesa's, the DC and Subway series. Anyway, so I'm looking for an all-purpose overdrive pedal to use in amp demos, and I got these three Rockets to try out. Now, for those of you wondering why I'd be looking at overdrive pedals when I have the Telos that I've designed, the Telos is a very specific thing designed to work with an already pushed amp and to kind of smooth things out for leads and such. And it's not an it was never designed to be an all-purpose thing. To give, a Marshall in a box, no matter what you're playing into, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not really looking for the world's most versatile, make everything sound the same. What I'm looking for is an overdrive pedal that accomplishes what most people want overdrive pedals to do, that has a wide range of usable sounds, from light overdrive, think, blues driver kind of thing, up through, some Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith kind of stuff out of a otherwise clean amp. I'd like it to be able to clean up well with the volume controls, and I'd like it to be able to boost an amp just from its output level without adding a lot of gain or color to it. And I'm interested in what the tone controls on the amp do, on the pedal do. So I've got these three Rockets: the Majestic, the Animal, and the GTO, and I have not looked up what they are supposed to be doing or what sounds to expect or any of that. I've not read any of the literature. I've not looked at any other video reviews. I'm just seeing what they sound like intuitively to me. For this test, I'm going to be playing similar parts through the Excalibur 15's normal channel, which is very similar to the normal channel of an AC30. And I'm going to be playing into a deluxe reverb channel with a mids tweak. It's going to be sounding a little bit more like a twin. Either way, these are very realistic, real-world sounds. I'll be using a Les Paul in standard tuning with nines, and a EJ Strat with single coils with 10s tuned to E flat. I'll be using a Jazz 3 pick. If you're curious, the mic for all this will be the same. It's an SM57 on a WGS ET65, no compression, no EQ after the fact. Everything will be pretty much what we hear in the room. So let me start with the clean sound from the Les Paul. This is the normal channel on the Excalibur. And I'm going to do these pedals in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with the Animal. I'll put the others to the side. And when I start each one, I'm going to start it with all the controls at noon. So start with it at noon, and then see if I can dial it in to sound really good with the particular guitar and amp. Then check its ability to roll back for cleans and its ability to be used as a boost rather than a drive. So let's see what's up with the Animal. Everything's set noon. Clean. right, it doesn't do the boost thing very well. The output level only goes so much. And the mids are very fixed. And the Excalibur normal channel's got a lot of mids already. Sounds very full. It might do better with the Fender. Let's see what the Strat sounds like with this thing. Let me turn the Overdrive. Let me set it back to noon, change to the Strat. So, Strat through the normal channel of the Excalibur 15. I'm not loving the mids with the Excalibur. Let's see how this same pedal does with the Fender. All right, with the Fender, whose preamp doesn't have the same compression as the Vox style stuff, the boost is working a little bit better. But you still got to have the drive also. So I'm not sure that architecture is going to do what I want, because I'd like to be able to use it as a clean boost as well. It's not bad, it just definitely has a lot of mids, even with this relatively scooped sounding Fender. Let's go to the Les Paul with this pedal and the Fender. All these things are subjective, and I'm not saying that any of the ones that don't work for me are bad, but I don't think that the Animal works for me. So let's switch to the GTO and see what it's all about. All right, back with the Les Paul. All knobs at noon. right, this one works as a boost. I wonder. I switch to the Strat. I'm getting some big tube screamer vibes from this. Certainly has a more flexible EQ set of controls, what they're calling accent and warmth, than a tube screamer. But I'm getting some tube screamer-esque stuff out of it. I'm going to try this into the Excalibur. Yeah, I'm hearing Tube Screamer with a better set of tone controls, you know, rather than just the one. The noise floor is also a little bit higher than I'd like. There's a honkiness. Just for comparison, I'm going to turn the amp up on the Excalibur to get the amp overdrive. There's a honkiness with the GTO. That Tube Screamers often have as well, and some people love that. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad pedal by any means. I'm just thinking this may not be the one that I want to go with. Let me try the Majestic. All right, again, we're on the Excalibur 15. I set it back to clean. Got the Les Paul, got the Majestic set with all the controls at noon. sounds pretty damn good with the Les Paul and the Excalibur. Let's see how it sounds with the Strat through the Excalibur. It's got lots of attitude, but it doesn't have that nasal honk that the GTO has. And it doesn't have this mid-range emphasis on that the Animal does that works against the Vox style and even kind of blankets on the Fender. So let's see how the same settings do the Strat. Need some more oomph with the Strat. I've got the volume up and the drive low. Let's change that ratio. I think this pedal's voicings create real strength for the Les Paul with its humbuckers, but those strengths for humbuckers seem to create weaknesses for these single coils. And that's okay. Not everything should be all things for everything. Let's see how it sounds through that Fender. All right, without the pedal. Let's try that with the Les Paul. This is an interesting pedal. It doesn't add a lot of overdrive. You know, it just doesn't have a lot of overdrive to add. With this Fender, it seems just to be a different color. I mean, it's got more gain, but it's, you know, it doesn't sound like a Marshall. It's very much dependent on the signal coming into it, whether it's the Strat or the Les Paul. I think it sounds a lot better with the Les Paul than with the Strat, but through the Fender, it certainly did better than it did through the Excalibur, where the mids, it just wasn't able to shape that just right. It just had a little bit of hardness to it. It's hard to describe these things. You know it when you hear it. This is a very good pedal. I mean, all of them are high quality. This one is the one that I'm most tempted by, but I think it might fall kind of in the Zen Drive camp as a color pedal to get certain sounds rather than an all-purpose overdrive pedal, because I don't want to get back into having a big pedal board with this option and this option and this option and this option. I want primarily just to use the guitar and amp, maybe a volume pedal or the knobs on the guitar, but I like to have something I can kick in. And if it was just for me, it'd probably be a fuzz pedal, but I need something that's real world for other people. And it's really nice, the ability to shape the tone so that, you know, like on this Les Paul, when it's clean, it's very full on the Fender. Turn this on, I can turn down the lows a little bit, bring up the highs a little bit. And it cleans up really well. It just doesn't really go into big overdrive. That's not bad, but that really sounds like a amp being pushed rather than massive overdrive. And that's something that I look for as well. I think this pedal would be a great second pedal to have. And it's very pretty. But given the price point, I'm not sure whether this as a second color, second pedal for me is justifiable at this point, since I relatively rarely use overdrive pedals. But I have to say, of the three, this is the one that I find the most useful for the way I like to play and the amps I like to play through. Maybe pushing a Marshall. This would have a little more oomph because the amp has more oomph. In fact, I think I need to do that. I'm going to turn the Excalibur 15 back on and set it to higher gain. Then we're going to add this to that and see how it does. Because if I go to the Pinto channel of the Excalibur, there's a lot of overlap with some Marshall stuff there. I think that'll be a worthwhile experiment. All right, so for this test, we're going to be using the Les Paul into the Excalibur 15 Pinto channel with a volume about 1030, almost 11 o'clock. Tight switch down for full low end. Color about 2 o'clock, so it's not the full bright, but it's not dark. Master on 10. I'll tell you what, when I started this video out, I said, I'm not really worried about how it does into an overdriven amp. I'm looking for something that is how most people use it, overdrive in a clean amp, and that's still the case. If I were gigging, as opposed to just doing videos here, and I were gigging with this Excalibur, as I hope to do at some point in the next couple of years as the world returns to normal, I think this would be an excellent choice. That sounds really good, and you can just shape it beyond what the amp itself is doing with the treble and bass. And on that, I had the level up about 3 o'clock and only had the drive at 10 o'clock because the amp had lots of drive. To be fair, let's swap out and do the other two through the same, exact same settings. Without the pedal. All right, the Animal adds a mid-range thickness that the Majestic does not. I know this amp very well. With the Majestic, this amp sounds more like you just turn the volume up from 11 o'clock to like 2 o'clock. This one's adding some color of its own, but it's not working against the amp. It is still more MIDI. There's a little bit of a fizz on the attack with this one. All right, this one just lost for me because there's a sizzle riding the note with this pedal that's not there with the amp and wasn't there with the same Majestic. This pedal also pops a lot more than the Majestic does, a lot more, especially into an overdriven loud amp. That could be an issue. I'm not going to take it apart and fix it because this is a brand new pedal, which I'm not planning on buying, and I have no interest in voiding that warranty. But let's try the GTO while we're doing all this fun stuff. All right, the GTO, amp without it. certainly has that mid-range thing. That was using it as boost with a drive oil. Let's turn its drive up. This one's got a lot more output than the others. Well, that works a lot better boosting an amp than it did as, boosting an already dirty amp than it did being all the overdrive on a clean amp. Definitely it's got that tube screamer mid-range response, which is a good and bad thing. A bit more flexible than other tube screamers. Again, though, has a relatively high noise floor for what it does. And it pops more than the Majestic, but less than the Animal. So this is interesting. Of the three, with a clean amp, I find the Majestic to be a very interesting additional color, where the others I find to be a little bit overbearing. And through the dirty amp, while all three can get some cool sounds, I think the Animal, between the popping and that tearing paper sound it gets, at least through this amp, I haven't tested it through a Marshall. Not a huge fan of what's happening there. The GTO sounds good, but without directly comparing it to a tube screamer, I'm not sure that it's all that different. And there are a lot of variations on tube screamers, and I could make one myself for about $60. The Majestic, I'm tempted by. The Majestic really does sound good. It pushes the driven amp really well. It has enough tonal control to shape it without radically changing it. It still sounds like the guitar through the amp. It's just that with a clean amp, it just adds some slight, blues driver, Zen drive kind of things. It's a cool sound, but it is maybe just not as flexible as I would like. Now, part of me, the guy who designed amps, applauds the hell out of this, because this would really be a nice control for an already driven amp, as I just demonstrated. And it is a very nice, non-intrusive additional color with cleans. So I think this definitely has a role. I'm just not sure that this is going to be the all-purpose drive for amp demos that I need, because I really need to be able to have someone's Princeton set totally clean and have a pedal which makes it sound like it's a Marshall. As long as you scale back your expectations to be realistic. Anyway, so I need to find something with a little more output flexibility in terms of the character of the drive, because this is not about me going out and gigging. I take that Excalibur, the Les Paul, the Strat, and this Majestic, and then it's just on what notes I play. So this is a very inconclusive video, and it was not meant to be a thorough review, and it is not an attack on any of the ones that did not work for me. And if any of these work for you, great. It's all subjective at this point, and everyone's rig is a little bit different. Of these three, I know that this one translates better to both sets of amps, the Fender and the Vox style. And the Vox has enough similarity to the Marshall. I suspect this would do the same as well. So I guess I'll stop nattering on. I'll let you draw your own conclusions, and if you agree, if you disagree, put it in the comments. Tell me I'm full of it, etc.